and welcome to Edison Open House Future Transport 2021. In this session, we're focusing on an extraordinary company, ElectReon. Its smart road technology enables wireless charging for electric vehicles on the go. Yep, that is extraordinary. With me is their CMO, Charlie Levine. Charlie, welcome.
Thank you, Vivian. Thanks for having us.
Now, this really is extraordinary. As a science journalist, I remember being told this 10 years ago, that this technology was in the offing, and none of us science journalists believed it. So tell me, what does it do? How is it possible?
So the technology works on the same principle as an electronic stove, where you have the magnetic coupling between the base of the pan and the stove itself. Or you might have seen it with an electric toothbrush that's also wireless charging there. It just means over-the-air transfer of energy, and it's not really a new idea. It's been around since the days of Tesla. And essentially people have been thinking about how best to utilize it, and that includes the founders of ElectReon, who around 10 years ago started working on the concept of dynamic wireless charging, or charging vehicles on the go. When they cracked that, they started working on different charging applications. So charging vehicles that are slow moving, for example, like taxi queues, where you already have a vehicle that's moving slowly, waiting to pick up passengers. And of course, static charging, which is ideal for vehicles that are already parked.
So I get the electric toothbrush, but actually this means presumably having a smart road. And that means a lot of installation and infrastructure. And how much smart roads do you need? How does this actually transpire in reality, in practical terms?
So if we start with the dynamic wireless charging, or the electric roads, or smart roads, or whatever you want to call them, in our analysis, when we look at a typical city, we see that somewhere between 20 and 35% of the city's roads would need to be electrified in order for us to provide charging to different vehicles. So when we look at the market, we're looking at first of all at fleets. They're our go-to in terms of customers. So we might start looking at bus fleets, for example, and then scaling up and offering the service to other city vehicles or municipal vehicles, like garbage trucks or trash vehicles, or taxis, or shared mobility modes like taxis and the other ride-hailing and sharing services that are out there. But I think, when people think about this concept of dynamic wireless charging, they tend to think that we're suggesting that you need to dig up all of the roads in every city and deploy it. But that's obviously not something that we're aiming for, and it's not feasible. In terms of entering the market, what we're looking at is, where does it make most sense, and where can we provide the most amount of value? So that might be a combination of our dynamic charging. It might be the semi-dynamic charging for areas where there's built-up traffic and the vehicles tend to move pretty slowly. Or it might be static charging. So I think when we look at different fleets, like commercial fleets or last-mile deliveries, it actually makes a lot of sense to put the wireless charging technology at the loading docks, because the vehicles are already there, right, loading up with their cargo. The traditional plug-in charging solutions don't fit there, because the moment that you put a charging station or a charging pole between the different entry points to the facilities, the vehicles can no longer maneuver in and out. But if you have nothing above the surface, and that's what we're able to do with our wireless charging, is put everything underground, including the management unit and all of the technology around that supports the charging, then suddenly there's no change to the fleet's behavior. Same for taxi fleets. If you look at a taxi strip that's typically in front of a train station or an airport, right? If the vehicles are already there and they're moving slowly, why not put that technology under the ground and empower the vehicles to charge throughout the day?
So 2 questions for you, Charlie. First of all, just describe, what does this smart road actually look like? And second, and perhaps more importantly, how is it powered?
So the smart road, or the electric road, looks exactly like a regular road. In all of our deployments that we've done so far in our pilot projects, you wouldn't be able to know and that there was anything happening below ground, unless you read the sign and acknowledged the sign that this was a smart road or an electric road. So, that's part of the beauty and the sadness of the technology, is that if we were to invite you to ride the bus or see one of our trucks being charged, for example, you'll see the energy being transferred on the screen that we've brought specifically in to demonstrate the technology, so that you can see something's happening. But other than that, you can't hear anything, and you can't see anything because everything is underground. And you get really no sense that anything is happening unless you're watching the screen. And in terms of how it's all powered up, so we connect to a regular grid connection that's typically at the side of the road. And then we bring in a management unit with something that we've designed ourselves. And the management unit is able to provide the power from the energy grid directly to the road infrastructure, or in the cases of static charging or semi-dynamic charging, to the paved area. And then that energy is transferred to the vehicle receivers.
It's an absolutely dazzling concept. You mentioned some pilots. How are they going?
So today we have a pilot in our hometown, Tel Aviv, where we're demonstrating charging of a public bus. The bus is actually operating a line between an inner city terminal, and then it's operating, it's going on its route and it's returning. So we have static charging at the terminal and en route charging with this dynamic wireless power transfer that we've been talking about. And what we're ultimately able to show is that the bus can operate a 24/7 service, because what we're providing is top-up charging at regular intervals throughout the day and en route. So the bus never needs to stop to charge again. And it's operational, the bus, and it will be open to the public in a few weeks, actually. And we have another pilot in Gotland, the island of Gotland in Sweden. There we're demonstrating that we can charge 2 vehicles with different energy requirements, different battery capacities, whole different systems really, simultaneously. And there, again, the bus and the truck are both operational and running on the road. It's open to the public to view. And the bus will be available for the public to ride very shortly. There it's between an airport and a transit hub. In Germany, we have 2 projects underway. One of them is with an energy provider, EMBW. Similar use case with a shuttle service, and we'll be scaling that up throughout the rest of this year. And we've just announced a project with different partners in Italy, and it's on a toll road application. And that we expect to break ground probably in the 3rd quarter of this year, along with our 2nd project in Germany. So 3 are up and running and about to be open to the public, and 2 breaking ground this year.
So clearly you have partnerships with various transport companies, but do you also have partnerships with specific battery manufacturers? Do you need a particular type of battery in order to be able to use your technology, or is it agnostic as to battery?
It's actually completely agnostic to the battery type on the vehicle. Even fuel cells, for example, there can be a pairing there and a synergy that works. And so it's not really the battery manufacturers that we need to partner with. It's the OEMs and the auto manufacturers that are specifically important to us, because there is a vehicle side part or element to our technology. And ultimately, we want to offer an off-the-shelf experience for our end customers, for the fleet customers. And for that, we need collaboration from different OEMs and auto manufacturers. Although it is important to say that even when we collaborate with them, not very much is required from them. The vehicle receivers can be installed completely aftermarket. And know that it requires 0 change to the vehicle itself. It's all just cushioned directly under the chassis, so nothing even inside the vehicle. And then it's connected in terms of communication and the like, but not very much required from the OEM side.
So this system isn't really designed for a vehicle to get its whole charge, rather a top-up charge or top-up charges during a day.
I would say that that's a fair assessment, yes. If you look at a scenario where, let's say, a bus fleet or a commercial van fleet, for example, already has overnight charging in place, then what you can consider this technology as is a range extender. If you put it in places that you can't normally put plug-in charging infrastructure or conductive charging infrastructure, then you're extending the range. But you're also offering something else. You're enabling a reduction of the battery capacity, which when we look at the efficiencies and sustainability issues around electric vehicles and electric vehicles that scale and for large fleets, and that's a huge saving for the fleet operator, and B, it has a huge environmental impact in helping reduce the amount of carbon emissions. But yes, top-up charging is the most common use case for our technology.
So what factors will you need to really accelerate the timeline to commercialization? Presumably, you've been boosted, as have all companies in this sector, by the net zero agenda.
Yes, absolutely. When the founders started the company back at the beginning of the last decade, they had to spend a lot of time explaining how and why electric vehicles are important and how the transition to electric was going to happen. So, they were blue in the face there discussing those points with potential customers and clients and partners. And I think in the last 3 to 4 years, it's become abundantly clear that everybody is moving to electric. The only question is how and when it will happen. So the pilots that we're operating today are to demonstrate our technology. And now we're entering the commercialization phase. So there's a couple of elements there that are important for us. One would definitely be the engineering and research and development scale up. So this year our teams will double in size. This is already underway. And we expect to increase these numbers incrementally over the next few years as we begin larger and larger deployments and offer projects at much larger scale and in different geographic regions. We're also extending and increasing the business development team and the marketing team here at the company. If we've been active in the European market up until now, we plan to enter the US market most likely this year. And we're continuously examining opportunities in other regions. And we're also critically for us in terms of scale up and commercialization is supply chain sustainability. So, of course, when we look at our technology, there are many components in the technology coming from many different places around the world. So we need to make sure that we're securing and backing up our global supply chain so that we are limiting risk factors there. And that's the same across our entire industry and other industries too. In terms of commercial deployment itself, well, today we can lay around 1 kilometer of electric road in one night, and we can also deploy an entire facility. If you take a bus terminal or station, for example, or charging at the loading docks in a specific facility, we can do one of those in one night. But we want to get to the point that we can do tens, if not hundreds of kilometers in one night to limit impacts on the public and on the road itself, and to be able to deploy at massive scale. So for that, we're working on an automated technology that will deploy the road very much like a conveyor belt that drops in like this. And we talked earlier, Vivian, about partners. Of course, they're a huge part of our ability to scale up and to provide value to the end customers. So whether it's energy and grid companies, whether it's the road infrastructure partners, whether it's the OEMs and the auto manufacturers, whether it's the fleets themselves, well, we need lots of collaboration with many different partners there. And we're working on expanding those in Europe and beginning to look at the right partners for us in the US, and we'll be repeating that process in different regions.
So here comes the $64,000 question. What kind of scale do you need to be earnings positive?
Great question. So if you look at it on a project basis, we're building projects with an end user already embedded into the project, right? If we go to a fleet operator like a bus company or a taxi company or whoever it might be, we're already going to them and saying that you're the customer and we'll provide the charging for you. And we're offering an end-to-end solution here. So that's charging as a service, as we call it, which includes us financing the infrastructure itself, and then charging the customer based on the utilization of the charging station. So whether or not it's a road or whether it's an individual charging station, it doesn't matter. It's the same principle. And because we already have the customer, we can anticipate a very high utilization rate of the system. And then over the lifetime of the project, and then over the project lifetime, we will increase the number of vehicles using the system. So on a project basis, the payback period is pretty short. It really depends from different segment to segment, but you can say something along the lines of between 2 to 4 years for payback for any project that we'll deliver, positive earnings after that, and then the project lifetime could be anywhere between 7 to 20 years. Of course, on a company level, when we think about our scale-up efforts and everything that we've talked about increasing our R&D team capacity, we're on a mega hire trend right now. This will impact our overall profitability, but we're looking at a very interesting business case with a short payback period for individual projects.
It's, as I said, an absolutely dazzling concept, and one which perhaps none of us would have imagined. No doubt that's why it was so difficult for your founders a decade ago to try and persuade people that it was a possibility. One final question which we've been asking everyone on future transport is, what's your vision of the future of transport?
I think that it can be summarized in 4 words: autonomous, connected, shared, and of course electric. So autonomous vehicles will hopefully eliminate traffic jams. They'll decrease the number of deaths and accidents that we have on the road. It will increase productive hours for us. When you think about the fact that you'll no longer be driving in a traffic jam and wasting time, and it will increase the efficiencies of the movement of goods as well. So I think that's one major trend. Connected at a global scale, we're talking about traveling between transport modes. So it should be completely seamless and convenient, where switching between a metro, the underground, and a bike or a bus or walking or whatever combination it will be really quite the breeze. And I think this needs to be equitable. What I've described, you can see in some major cities in Western Europe and in northern regions of the world, but we need to see this all over our urban environments for it to be, the mega trend that holds out. We also think that shared transport and on-demand mobility services, so like car sharing, ride hailing, for example, will all be offering customers a viable alternative to traditional private vehicle ownership, and it will be the favored mode of transport within the city. So we anticipate that will be increasing. The usage of these systems will be increasing rapidly over the coming years. And then, of course, electric. So you can't have any of the above or any of these trends without having electric transport, because then it will be clean and efficient and sustainable. And like I said, it's no longer a question of if, but when. And we're seeing it happening throughout the different fleet customers that we're talking about. And in terms of ElectReon's role in it, well, we think that ElectReon and other wireless charging solutions have a massive role to play in empowering the transition to electric mobility, and to underpinning some of those trends that we talked about. So I think when you read about it, this concept of automated, connected, electric, and shared mobility is thought of as the end game for clean and efficient transport. But this will only happen if we have effective and convenient charging systems in place that enable these shifts. So wireless charging takes that paradigm one step further. It says, well, hold on a second, why do we need to stop to charge? And it turns roads essentially into what I think can be described as a collaborative energy resource. It will help make sure that autonomous vehicles are on the road and charging as much as possible. And services that we're providing to the public, like buses, like mobility as a services, mobility like buses, like mobility as a service, they'll be able to offer a 24/7 service to the public. And when we think about governments and some of the challenges that they're now facing, they're asking themselves, okay, how do we replace the revenue that was coming from gas and petrol? Thinking about that, where does that deficit come in, and how are we going to replace it? Well, electric road systems could actually be the ideal technological solution there, because today, if most charging happens at home and at workplaces, it's very difficult to know how much of the energy that's transferred or how much electricity is going to the vehicles and how much is going to either the household or the workplace. The billing element there, and then the taxation on the billing is very, very tricky. With an electric road system, anywhere that it is, the sole purpose of the road is to transfer energy to the vehicle. So we know exactly how much energy was transferred to which vehicles and how much to the entire fleet or the private customer. So it's very easy to bill and it's very easy to tax.
Charlie, it's a compelling vision of the future. Thank you so much for talking to us about ElectReon.
Thank you, Vivian.